It's Sunday, August 11th, day 310 of the October 7th war. 10 months since Hamas waged war on Israel. We'll break down the security situation with defense expert Yaakov Katz and then speak with activist and influencer Lizzy Savetsky. Keeping you up to date, I'm Michael Dixon, and this is Stand With Us TV Live. Shalom from Israel, a concerning time in the Middle East and for all those who care about Israel around the world. In a moment, we'll get the latest security briefing with Yaakov Katz. But first, the news headlines from the last week at war. Israel remains on alert from a potential reprisal attack from Iran, either directly or via Hezbollah in Lebanon, following the death of Ismail Haniyeh in a hotel room in Tehran. While daily life is carrying on, security forces are said to be at the highest level of readiness. The IDF continues military operations in Gaza, including a significant ground operation in Khan Yunis. The IDF says that it has precise intelligence that Hamas is operating out of the humanitarian zone, endangering Gazan civilians, and pushed back against wildly exaggerated casualty numbers reported from a disused school that has been turned into a Hamas terror base. The IDF published names of the 19 terror operatives killed in that raid. Tensions between Israel and Hezbollah have escalated, with the IDF carrying out strikes in southern Lebanon. These strikes led to the killing of a senior Hezbollah commander, Ali Jamal al-Din Jawad, dealing a significant blow to the group's operational capabilities. Following the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, Yak Sinir was appointed the new leader of Hamas. This leadership change has important implications for the ongoing conflict and potential ceasefire negotiations. Israel has confirmed it will send a delegation to work with Egypt, Qatar, the US, and other interlocutors to discuss a potential hostage release deal. The meeting is expected to take place this week. And in a significant achievement, Israel's athletes have won a total of 7 medals at the ongoing Olympics. This marks one of Israel's best performances at the Games, with athletes excelling in various sports and bringing national pride during a challenging time. Well, joining us now is a defense expert and former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post. He's appeared non-stop on international media since October the 7th, and he's the author of 3 books, including Israel versus Iran, The Shadow War. No better person to join us at this time than Yaakov Katz. Yaakov, welcome back to Stand With Us TV.
It's great to be with you, Michael.
Now, you last joined us following the unprecedented attack from the Iranian regime. This time, Israel is bracing itself for another potential attack from Iran or Hezbollah. Most airlines have cancelled flights, and Israelis are trying to carry on, but are in some kind of stasis. So what do you make of this waiting game?
Well, I think to some extent, it shows that Iran has won to a partial part of this whole conflict by getting Israel somewhat paralyzed. Although Israelis are still out on the streets and we're all seeing them at the beaches and we're seeing them in the coffee shops and the restaurants and people are still going on hikes, there is a heightened state of anxiety. There is the fact that Israel is increasingly isolated with the cancellation of all international airlines, pretty much no longer flying to this country. United Airlines announcing that it will only be renewing flights maybe sometime at the end of September or beginning of October, all because of an Iranian threat. Not a single missile fired, just because Iran has threatened. And that gives Iran a power and a strength that shows also the vulnerability of Israel and the Western world. But I would say is one of the reasons that they have been waiting, and that it's now almost 2 weeks since the killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, and we have yet to see an Iranian response, does show that they are concerned that if they do something that is a bit too strong, a bit too fierce, a bit too aggressive, they could come under a fierce Israeli retaliation. And you have unprecedented U.S. military buildup in this region that is also deterring them from doing something at the moment. So this is a waiting game that is tense and full of danger, but also opportunities.
And so to what extent did the assassination of high-level Hamas and Hezbollah leaders in Beirut and in Tehran represent a new development in this now 10-month-old war?
I think to some extent it's a further enforcement or reinforcement of what we saw after the April direct attack by Iran. Let's remember, Michael, that then it came after Israel blew up an IRGC building in Damascus, killing General Zahadi, who was the commander of IRGC forces in Lebanon and Syria. Iran, for the first time in a 45-year campaign under which it tried to eliminate the state of Israel, had never attacked Israel directly, did that for the first time with 350 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. That was a new dimension of warfare. And it got Israel to start to realize that it's possible that any move it makes, whether against Hezbollah or against Hamas, definitely against someone in Iran, could lead to another Iranian direct retaliation. That is what we're seeing now. So basically, we now have just a deeper understanding that what was is no longer the situation. In other words, if Israel used to think it could fight the proxies in an isolated way, it fights Hamas, it fights Hezbollah, but it doesn't fight everybody together. We now know that that's no longer the case. The new reality is if you attack one, you are basically attacking all, and the response could come from all of them. So this is a multi-front war and conflict. No matter who you are engaging with, you have to be prepared for retaliation from everywhere.
And of course, Iran behind them all. So what should the American and Western response be to a resurgent Iran? And what messages is the Ayatollah getting from Israel's allies?
Well, I think for the time being, we have a thank you to give to the Biden administration and some gratitude with the fact that they have sent to the region really an unprecedented buildup of military forces, from aircraft carrier strike groups to destroyers to amphibious vessels, Marines, F-22 Raptors, that's the most advanced American stealth fifth-generation fighter jet, as well as other fighter jet squadrons, lots of reconnaissance aircraft. They have really sent a big force here to try and deter the Iranians as well as Hezbollah from doing something in a big way. And they've sent messages to the Iranians, public and private, that they will not tolerate a significant and aggressive attack against Israel or against their own American forces that are deployed in places in the region, for example, in Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and other places. What I would have liked to see a bit more of, though, is a more direct threat or warning by the Biden administration, by the president himself, and by other world leaders to the Iranians: stop. This can't go on. By the way, we spoke just before, Michael, about the airlines, right, that have canceled. The German airlines, other European airlines, the American airlines. Why do they cancel? Right? Because they're afraid that if Ben Gurion Airport gets hit, maybe their airplanes will get hit, insurance costs. What about their staff spending the night? Maybe something will, God forbid, happen to them. Totally get it. But why are they surrendering to this terror instead of the other alternative is for the Americans, the Germans, the Italians, the French, right? Air France, all of them, British Airways, everybody to say to Iran, if you dare to attack Ben Gurion Airport, where our planes are landing and are parked, we will see that as a direct assault against us. In other words, that would carry so much more weight than instead, I hate to say it, putting your tail between your legs and running away. That's what's happening.
And it may happen for a long time to come. We just don't know. Of course, last time we spoke in April, that alliance of nations, including the US, Britain, France, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, they came together to help protect Israel against a direct drone and missile attack from Iran. So what do you foresee happening if Iran launches another attack?
We saw an amazing collective and a coalition of all those different countries that you just mentioned, which really came together and did a superb job in intercepting almost 99% of all the different projectiles and drones that were launched by Iran towards Israel. There were a number of ballistic missiles, though, that we have to say that did land here in Israel, and thankfully only caused minimal damage, and there was no loss of life. There was one young Bedouin girl who was injured, but she has survived that attack. What will happen in this case, we have to hope that that regional collective, that coalition, will once again come together. We saw General Kurella, who is the commander of the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, which is based partially in Qatar. He's been here already meeting with Herzi Halevi, the IDF chief of staff. There's a ton of coordination that's going on between CENTCOM and the IDF, as well as other forces that are deployed in the region. The British, for example, have air bases in places like Cyprus, and the French have some airfields in the region as well. I would expect to see more of that. What the Jordanians will do this time, what the Saudis will do this time, I don't know that we can predict ahead of time, but I think that they will defend their own airspace. We've already seen the Jordanians and the Egyptians say to the Iranians, we will not allow a violation of our airspace. So if you think you're going to fly your drones over Jordan or over Egypt, right? They did that, by the way, in that effective drone attack by the Houthis just a few weeks ago when they killed an Israeli in Tel Aviv. They managed to fly the drone from the south. They crossed over Egypt to the Mediterranean and hit Tel Aviv from the west, as opposed to flying up, for example, through the Jordan Valley, coming up just from the south in a straight line. So they have done over Egypt in the past, definitely over Jordan. They have said they will protect their own airspace, not necessarily for us, right, to defend Israel, but for themselves. But of course, the benefit would also be for Israel.
And let's turn to Gaza now. So over the weekend, the international press ran wild with estimates of casualties, and what they said was an IDF attack on a school. It quickly became apparent that there was more to the story than this. Can you tell us more?
Well, I mean, Michael, I know you get as frustrated as I do when we see these stories that blow up. I mean, first of all, it just has to be said, because you can never say it enough. Nowhere in the world would there ever be a conflict that the international media, from the BBC to the New York Times to the Washington Post, everyone would quote the ISIS health ministry or the Al-Qaeda health ministry. But for some reason, when it comes to Hamas, they just say it's the Gaza health officials and it's okay. No, the Gaza health officials are Hamas guys, and you know this. And the fact that you're willing to quote them and to just parrot what they say is shame on you. It really is. It's a shame on the international media. With that said, yes, there was an attack on what was perceived to be a school in central Gaza. Now we know that a lot of displaced Palestinians who have been moved from their homes because of the IDF operations have taken up refuge in a lot of these UN compounds. There are several thousand people who are in this school compound. It's a very big school. Israel targeted with amazing precision in a 3-level structure, targeted with amazing precision just one section. The Palestinians, against these Gaza health officials, of course, Hamas, right away, by the way, without even hesitating, talk about 80 killed, 90 killed, 70 killed. And I don't want to make little or light of the loss of life. Of course, any civilian who's killed is always a tragedy of itself. But then the IDF puts out a chart, a graph with about 19 or 20 faces, names, titles, roles of who these terrorists were. This was a Hamas command center. This is what the IDF targeted. It didn't target a school. It targeted a school that had been turned into a Hamas command center. And folks, you all know this already. A school, of course, you cannot attack. A mosque, you cannot attack. A hospital, you cannot attack. But the moment that those facilities are turned into military installations, they become, according to international law, legitimate targets. The question then becomes one of proportion. Is hitting that target proportional with the loss of life that will happen there? Now, if they say 70 people are killed, and we now know that the IDF can name and give a picture and a title for 20 of those people, so we're already up to close to a third of those people being named and identified as terrorists. So we're at what could be almost a ratio, assuming the 70 number is right, and we have no reason to believe it is, of 1 combatant to 2 civilians. Is that proportional? Well, if you look at conflict in the world, when the UN will tell you that generally the average is 1 to 6 and sometimes 1 to 9, then what Israel did in this so-called school turned into Hamas military compound is actually pretty astonishing, the accuracy and the precision. So again, I think we have to look at this all and take everything with a grain of salt, never believe what Hamas is saying, and give Israel a little credit, people. You know, Israel does not just bomb schools. We've seen this over and over and over again. And each time these blood libels are spread about Israel, that balloon is popped so quickly. We knew it from the Al-Aliyah hospital in the beginning of the war. We've seen it time again. They claim things that turn out not to be true. And still, Michael, it's just terrible to see how everybody in the world just believes it. Hook, line, sinker.
And of course, that's music to the ears of Yak Sinir, who this week received a promotion, presumably from deep underground. He's now the head of the Hamas political bureau. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's a funny title because Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that we know from October 7th, right? Has committed the greatest atrocities known to mankind, right? I mean, in beheading people, in rape and sexual assault, in murder of young children and Holocaust survivors, in the abduction of 250 Israelis. I mean, these people have no respect for anything that has to do with humanity. But then to say that they have a political wing, right? This is their way of laundering themselves, of trying to be perceived as a legitimate actor and player on the international stage. Yak Sinir was promoted. I think basically it's meant to send a twofold message, right? It came after the elimination of Ismail Haniyeh, who was killed obviously just about 2 weeks ago in that bombing reportedly or allegedly carried out by the Mossad in Tehran at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps at the IRGC guest house, where he was spending the night after attending the presidential inauguration in Iran. They had to choose someone else. Basically, who is the face of Hamas to the world? Who's going to go around and raise money from the Qataris and the Iranians and other people? To put Sinir in that role, on the other hand, does consolidate power because he effectively is the man making the decisions. He's the one who decides what will happen to the hostages. He's the one who will decide really at the end of the day if there's going to be a deal. But it's also to show the world, we don't care what you do. You see, we're gonna double down. We're gonna continue fighting. And that's the message they're sending by appointing Sinir. Effectively, will it change much? Probably not. I don't think we're going to see Sinir traveling around the world anytime soon. And if he does, I would hope that he would meet a similar fate to the one that Haniyeh met.
Inshallah. We are 10 months on, and I want to bring up some statistics from the war on the screen. Of course, the event that preempted the war, the October the 7th massacres, is often dropped from the media narrative nowadays, but huge numbers of people who've lost their lives, who are injured, who fell in battle, and who are displaced. And so 10 months on, CNN ran with the story that Israeli gains against Hamas have not been as successful as the IDF has stated. What's your view?
Look, it's an asymmetric conflict, right? We're not fighting against a conventional military that you could say, okay, I conquered this piece of land, I destroyed this squadron or this armored corps unit, and therefore I can count up exactly what I did and I can call it a day and a victory. This is a war, and it's a campaign against a terrorist group that will continue to fight until it's very less breath. And it's going to be virtually impossible to kill each and every Hamas member inside the Gaza Strip. Just today, we saw a video that the IDF put out, 2 Hamas guys popping out of a tunnel armed. An Israeli drone takes them out. I mean, this is something that's going to continue to happen, and Israel is going to have to continue to operate against Hamas for a sustained campaign that is going to last years. This is not something that's going to end anytime soon. With that said, the CNN report, I think, was wrong in the sense that Israel has done a very good job in degrading Hamas capabilities. It has destroyed and broken the back of most of the battalions, about 80% of the battalions that Hamas had. That means taking out the command and control centers, taking out their main infrastructure, but a lot remains. And that's what's going to happen. And by the way, Michael, when you think about 10 months, yeah, it's a long time, but you know that it took 9 months for a coalition of countries around the world, including led by the United States and Britain, to fight ISIS just in Mosul, a city that's much smaller than the Gaza Strip, has less people than in the Gaza Strip, and many less fighters than what Israel's facing in the Gaza Strip. And people think 10 months is a long time. Listen, halavai, I wish this war were to be over yesterday. But we have to continue, and we will have to continue even once the war is declared over in its high-intensity stage. We'll have to continue to take out these targets to prevent them from ever being able to rebuild the capability that can once again threaten Israel.
And we discussed 2 of the 3 H's in the Iranian axis, Hezbollah and Hamas. Let's talk about the Houthis for a moment. To what extent was the IDF's attack on the Houthi-controlled port of Hodeidah a game changer?
Well, I don't know if it was a game changer. I mean, we have seen maybe a bit more quiet since then from the Houthi arena and from Yemen. Not as many attacks. That attack against the port in Hodeidah, in Yemen, which really, Yoav Gallant, I think Israel's defense minister, said it very accurately, because Israel blew up a fuel depot there, which was smoke billowing up into the sky. And he said, you can see this burning from across the Middle East. This was also sent as a message. It was meant to do two things. One was to show that Israel can reach distances like Yemen very far. The extended range of the Israeli Air Force, it required Israel to use mid-air refueling. It had to use its very sophisticated F-35s as well as its more long-range F-15s. This was a big operation, and it also showed that Israel has the ability to operate in a big combat radius, which includes not just Yemen, of course, and Gaza and Lebanon, which we already know, but also Iran, potentially. And we've seen reports of the Israeli Air Force operating over Iran in recent years. So this was an important message to show and to send to the world, but it was also meant to show the Houthis that they don't have immunity. Israel had basically taken a step back in the beginning of the war when the Houthis started to attack Israel with ballistic missiles, with drones, most of them intercepted, to the Americans and the British, who said, we will take care of the Yemen. And there were some bombings of some Houthi and Yemenite targets by the British and the Americans. After the attack on Tel Aviv, Israel said enough is enough. We cannot stand by and let them attack us directly. And maybe it was effective, because we have seen a decline in some of the attacks from the direction of Yemen. But I wouldn't say that this is over, right? Depending on what happens, if and when Iran does attack Israel in retaliation for the Hania killing, it will likely also include some role by the Houthis in Yemen.
And so at this 10-month juncture, we've seen incredible heroism on behalf of our IDF. We've seen innovations in this war that we couldn't have imagined. And Israel likes to pride itself on being able to defend itself by itself. So in today's Middle East, given the situation we're in, can it do that?
Well, I mean, this is a tough question, Michael. No question, because Israel today is facing a threat the likes of which we did not necessarily believe was possible 10 months ago, right? This multi-front belt of fire almost that surrounds Israel, from Gaza, where Hamas, yes, has degraded capabilities, but is still there, still has rockets, still has the ability to attack. Definitely Hezbollah with 150,000 rockets and missiles, and drones, which are proving to be very difficult for Israel to intercept. Of course, Iran with its ballistic missile capability, Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria, the Houthis in Yemen, obviously the West Bank, and just today we saw a terrorist attack in the Jordan Valley, right? We're fighting war today on multiple fronts. And this is something that I think is going to accompany us for a long time. Israel needs continued assistance. It needs the continued supply of weapons and spare parts from its friends and allies around the world, particularly the United States. But it needs all of that because it wants to be able, like you said so eloquently, it wants to be able to defend itself by itself. And that's always been the Israeli story. It's been one of, we don't want anyone to come here and defend us. We want the means to be able to defend ourselves. And I would hope that the world understands that. Sadly, we're seeing some parts of the world, right? Your former home in the UK right now, which is talking about a potential embargo and a stop to the delivery of weapons to Israel, although we don't get that much from the UK. And there's been reports also that maybe a new administration in the United States would consider something like this. I hope not. But we have to remember for the world that what starts here eventually gets there. And Israel is standing at the forefront of this battle against this crazy, radical Islamic form of terror that starts with Iran, but continues all over the Middle East. And it's imperative for not just for Israel, but for the entire world that we win and we have the continued means to be able to do that by ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, we pray for Israel's success and strength in the face of all of these challenges. Yaakov Katz, thank you very much for your insight and perspective today, as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Important analysis. Now, it's hard to believe, but we're coming up to a year since October the 7th. And at the Stand With Us Katz Education Center in Jerusalem, we'll be hosting an incredible exhibition of portraits of those we lost at the Nova Festival, those murdered on October the 7th, and our incredible, brave, fallen soldiers. The portraits and art are created by celebrated Israeli graffiti artist Bentzi Bronfman, who himself survived the Nova Festival, and it documents and perpetuates the memory of those hostages the murdered and IDF fallen soldiers. And the portraits were created with the permission of and in collaboration with the families. Take a look. Powerful, and I hope you'll be able to visit. The exhibition runs in Jerusalem from September 24th until October the 30th of this year. And for information and booking, please go to StandWithUs.com. Now, our next guest is no stranger to social media, captivating huge audiences with every video that she shares. She famously turned down a role on The Real Housewives of New York due to concerns about anti-Semitism. And today, she dedicates her time to being a voice for Israel and advocating for the Jewish people. She's currently in Israel, so it's great to welcome Lizzy Savetsky. Lizzy, it's great to have you back on Stand With Us TV.
It's great to be back, and I get to join you from the Holy Land where you are.
Amazing. And I'm going to start by asking you the obvious question. You're in Israel with all your family. Why now?
Well, it only seems appropriate. You know, the last time we were here together as a family was on October 7th. My kids at this point think that, you know, we only go to Israel during wartime. So, I mean, we've been in a war, but obviously we're under surmounting threats right now. And, you know, I love this place more than anywhere else in the world, and there's no place I'd rather be. And if anything, it just makes me want to be here more when we're under threat and attack.
And I know you've been out and about. So how have you found Israelis to be at this difficult time?
Israelis amaze me. You know, I have never seen such a spirit. I don't think it exists anywhere else in the world where you love your land and your people so much that no amount of fear can overwhelm that. It's wild. Like everyone is just out and about, going about their business. And I think it's amazing. You see why Israel is one of the happiest countries in the world. If they can be happy now, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, poll after poll tends to show that one of the happiest countries in the world. And you, as you mentioned, you were with us filming educational videos here in Israel on October the 6th. It was up until that point a wonderful Sukkot. It seems like a different era. We're now 10 months on from then. So what's life been like since?
It's so crazy because I was just with our tour guide who works for Stand With Us, Yoni. And Yoni, you know, we were together on October 6th. And I remember getting an email from him just a few days into the war of him in his uniform with his gun. And it was like this realization of everyone stops their lives, everyone stops their careers and focuses on what we have to do for our people and our homeland. And I was just with Yoni. Everything came full circle. I was just with Yoni 2 days ago in Tel Aviv touring again. And it's just, you know, we talked about how this has been it's almost like we've been stuck in this moment. Like I saw him on October 6th, and then I now see him 10 months later. And it's like time hasn't passed really at all, in the sense that we're still fighting this vicious terrorism and our lives are still on hold to a large degree. But you know, we've aged significantly. I have a lot more gray hair than I had when I was here on October 7th. But yeah, my whole life has been turned upside down, like all of us. And I'm just grateful that I am able to use my voice and my platform to feel like I can be of service and be purposeful during this absolutely horrendous time.
And so you're here now 10 months on. What will you take home from this particular trip to Israel?
You know, this trip was motivated because I wanted to bring my family back here. I didn't want their last impression of Israel to be the bomb shelter on October 7th, because we had had such a beautiful, amazing holiday here, experience with you guys here. And, you know, that was really what, when we think of Israel, what we were thinking of was, you know, leaving on October 8th. And it was so tragic and so hard. And so when we came back now, it wasn't about taking a luxurious vacation. Of course, it's amazing to be in Israel anytime, and it's beautiful here. And we've really enjoyed ourselves eating our way through and the beach and everything. But mostly what we've done is figure out how we can help. You know, we've been all over the place. We were at an orphanage in Netanya. We visited Schneider Children's Hospital, visited some sick kids there, because I want my kids and all of us to really understand that even though we are a country in crisis, there are still people that are suffering, that were suffering before, during, and will be after the war, and we can't forget about them as well. And it's just been so meaningful to be able to share this experience with my family. And when we're really helping each other, helping our brothers and sisters, you know, we went to an army base yesterday, and they showed us how they fly the drones. You know, we've had so many amazing experiences in the past couple of weeks, and it's each one of them has made us all fall more in love with Israel. And you know, you jokingly asked me when Aliyah is happening, and it feels imminent. So
Sam, we're ready. I've got the papers ready to sign. And I love it how you always involve your family, and particularly your children, in your activism. How important is that for you?
you know, it's not something that I gave too much thought to prior, because I had an Instagram account for so long and my kids were always a part of my content. And then when I made the shift to the full-time advocacy and Hasbara, as they call it, you know, it's just a part of the fabric of our family, is our obsession with being Jewish, and you know, therein our obsession with Israel. But the real shift was after October 7th. My kids were traumatized, and I know that we were safe in our hotel in the bomb shelter, but they really lost a piece of their innocence. And the best thing that I knew how to do as a mom, because there was no manual on how to parent through this, the best thing I knew how to do was to help them see how they could feel like they were a part of the solution somehow. And while we're not fighting on the ground, we're fighting an information war, and we are fighting a war to show our love in a sea of hate and our truth in a sea of lies. And to be able to have my kids feel empowered, like they are part of making that difference, has been super helpful in processing the trauma they experienced. And I think it's also given them, it's shown them that it doesn't matter how old you are, you can step up to the plate and be a huge part of making a change for the better.
I love that. And so, how do you tailor your message to reach diverse audiences? You know, you've got people who may initially be unsupportive of Israel who follow you. And what
Yeah.
kind of strategies have been effective to you in kind of shifting perspectives?
You know, I actually had a pretty big pivot with my mindset, um, since this war started. Because initially, I've been doing this advocacy work since 2021. So it's been over 3 years now. But I made the decision that when I'm making my content, I'm focused on talking to my own people. And I know that that may be confusing for people who see my content, because a lot of it is educational or dispelling myths or breaking down breaking news from the Jewish Zionist perspective or the truth perspective. But really, my goal is to empower my own people when they are in one-on-one conversations with somebody who may not know all the information, who may have only heard things about Israel from the media or social media that don't paint the true picture of the reality. And I want my followers to feel confident that they can talk about these issues, that they can talk about this news. Um, and that I really believe is the way to really open minds and hearts, is in these one-on-one conversations that we have with our neighbors, with our peers, with our colleagues. And so that's what I'm thinking when I make my content. And I do think it's effective. Um, it's we're in very tense times right now. The ice is so thin, and I know that we're not all going to agree on how each other advocates, but I think that every single voice is important. And there are a lot of advocates out there who do things I would never do, but they are reaching people that I couldn't reach. So I think we all just have to really be ourselves unapologetically. Like for me, I come from the fashion world, so I'm posting, Israeli-owned fashion brands, and I think that there's no wrong way to advocate right now. I think it's all about utilizing our own gifts and sphere of influence to make the largest splash we can.
And of course, this activism can be emotionally taxing, particularly, like now in a time of conflict. So how do you maintain your resilience, your mental health, while continuing to be such a strong voice for Israel and your people?
Such a great question. I haven't been very good at it, to be honest, Michael. I'm a very extreme person, so when I'm in, I'm all in, and it's been hard for me to compartmentalize. I feel lucky that I have my family on board with this. I always joke with my family. I'm like, "You're a Savetzky. This is the family business," so I don't very much have to separate my family life from this work. But I really don't know what I would do without Shabbat. I'm Shomer Shabbos. I have been. I became religious the year after college. I moved to Israel and went to seminary, and I've been observing Shabbos since I was 22. So it's been, over 16 years now. And that really saves me, because if I didn't have that day off, I would never stop. So, but it's really hard. And I always tell everyone out there, not just people in my position that are in the public eye, or have a platform that they're advocating with, but we all need a support system right now, because it's really challenging emotionally, and we need to surround ourselves with people that lift us up and delete any sort of toxicity, um, protect our little bubble of safety. um,
Hmm.
so I've really kept it tight with my friends and family.
Important advice. And let me ask you for another piece of advice. There'll be many people who've been considering a visit to Israel, but are worried. So what would you say to them, given the current situation about coming to Israel right now?
If you're thinking about coming to Israel, get on that plane, buy your ticket, and get here. It is exactly what I needed. There have been so many times where I've started to feel burnt out. Coming to Israel is that boost that I need to fire myself back up to keep going. There's no better feeling than being surrounded by your people, than being surrounded by the resilience and the spirit of this country. It is the most incredible feeling in the world. You will not regret it. Don't let the fear mongering get to you. It will it will change your entire perspective, just being here, just sitting here. As I sit here looking out at the old city of Jerusalem while I'm talking to you.
Incredible. And as good as it is for Israelis that people visit, I think it's great for the people who visit too, and maybe even more so.
100%. Yeah,
Let
I
me
think I get more out of it than they do.
Well, I don't know. We get a lot too. And so finally, you're releasing content daily. You've got much more to come from your trip in Israel, including some great films together with Stand With Us. Without giving anything away, what can people expect?
I had so many ideas. It's just amazing to have a partner like Stand With Us. You guys have been incredible before and during this insane time period, to be able to produce this educational content with your staff of experts, and their passion and their dedication to this cause. It's unbelievable. I would not be able to produce the level of content without you guys. But we have some really cool stuff coming your way. I really wanted to do some Tel Aviv focused content because last time we did Jerusalem. And I have something else really exciting that I'm not even going to go into it or try to ruin it, but I'm pinching myself. I can't believe you guys made this happen. It's not normal. I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out. Like,
I know
I
what
am
you're
going
talking
to be
about.
paying homage to one of my absolute heroes, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. So thank you for the access.
Well, it was your idea, and really, we're so grateful for everything that you do and for your voice. So thank you so much for being in Israel. Thank you for all that you do, Lizzy Savetsky.
Thank you so much. You're like my fairy godmother, my fairy godfather, Michael Dixon.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I'm like, can we do this? Sure, Lizzy, no problem.
Just need the wings.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
so
much,
much.
Lizzy. A terrific activist. Don't forget to follow Lizzy across social media platforms. Now, in our last show, I interviewed Israel's Olympic flag bearer and asked him this question. How do you see your chances in Paris? Well, here's a spoiler. Peter brought back the bronze, and he's here with a message for all of you.
Hello to all the supporters of Stand With Us. I'm Peter Palchik, Olympic bronze medalist, and I want to say thank you guys. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for cheering me and all the Israeli athletes. This is so important for us, and we're appreciated a lot. So happy to bring this medal for our beloved country. Peace.
Well done to all of Israel's medal winners and athletes for representing us with pride in this most challenging of years. Don't forget to subscribe to our videos on YouTube, and each one of our shows with their incredible guests are now available as podcasts on your favorite podcast platform, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just look for Stand With Us. And a great way to stand with us today is by donating. Head to standwithus.com/donate to support our work and keep us going strong. Thank you very much. We're sending love to the Israeli troops and to our brothers and sisters and allies worldwide, and our prayers for every single hostage to be back with their family soon. Together, we will prevail. Stay strong. Thanks for watching. Yisrael Chai.